They literally said they wanted to cut my head off. That was the thing.
What is the worst pay-per-view ever?
Easy. December to Dismember.
No, that's far too easy. It's banned. We all know it's crap.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, I've got a different one. It's a slightly more personal one, I guess. I'm going to go with Armageddon 2003. And I'll tell you why. It wasn't an outright terrible show. It was one of those shows that they have way too many of. They're just completely forgettable shows. It's known for the show where Evolution just had all the belts at the end, and they did it in the most unremarkable way. They just won everything. It was so boring. Triple H won the main championship in a triple threat match against Goldberg and Kane that went on like 20 minutes, and yeah, Goldberg,
good, a long
Kane
Goldberg
and Triple
match.
H. Yeah, and a long Triple H match. Who'd have thunk it? There was a ridiculous tag team turmoil match that also went on way too long. There was just nothing great about it. And it goes a long way to say that Christian and Chris Jericho versus Trish Stratus and Lita was probably the best match on the card. So it's my least, I think it's the worst pay-per-view ever because it was the moment I realized, I just started college and I realized I don't think I want to watch wrestling anymore. And that's when I just stopped and I went into my sort of dark age of wrestling, and I didn't start watching it again until like late in university in like 2007, 2008, something like that. So that is why it is my least favourite pay-per-view ever. But Molly Holly did retain her women's championship, so every cloud has a silver lining and everything.
Don't play cards with me. I cheat.
The Survivor Series 1999 is the worst pay-per-view ever. This is a period of time that everybody talks about with such reverence. They love the Attitude Era. And then we think about Steve Austin getting run over. We think about how that was the worst point in his career. I wish I was the one getting hit by Rikishi. At least he didn't have to sit through the rest of that pay-per-view. Listen, it was bad enough that WWE, with 8 days notice, still promoted Steve Austin on the card and then left us with the Big Show as a weeping, crying replacement, slavering all over the WWE title. That was bad enough. But at least Steve Austin didn't have to sit through the British Bulldog teaming with the Mean Street Posse, Gangrel and Steve Blackman suddenly trying to be friends when, who in reality ever even really liked Gangrel. All these various terrible wrestlers, one after another, who every week on Monday Night Raw would look like massive stars, suddenly playing to an audience just full of nothing but disdain for all of them because they just watched Rikishi run over Stone Cold Steve Austin. If only they knew the payoff was as bad, they probably want to turn up for next year's Survivor Series. An absolute disaster of epic proportions. Consider that days before we'd seen the Big Show surfing on his dead dad's coffin, and that wasn't as dark as this atrocious pay-per-view.
You want to play 21? I've got 22.
The worst wrestling pay-per-view of all time is WCW New Blood Rising 2000. It is the biggest WCW car crash train wreck Russovian mess you can ever imagine. And to illustrate that, I thought the best thing to do was just list everything that is wrong with the show and recite it to you here. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So first of all, the pay-per-view was named after a faction who had already split up. The New Blood, Free Count and the Young Dragons. When you have a big exciting tag team match, sometimes it's for a belt, sometimes it's for a title shot. No, this was for a gold record. What part of that makes sense? Tank Abbott was dancing around like Rikishi in a top with his nipples cut out. That was good. Judy Bagwell on a forklift, right?
Yes!
The classic. Major Guns and Miss Hancock, Stacy Keibler, had, and I quote, a mud rip off the clothes match. How do you think that one ended?
Messily.
With a literal miscarriage angle.
Oh, God.
Yes, that happened. Sting binned the Kiss Demon in under 1 minute. And to top it all off, we had a hideously overbooked main event featuring not one, not two, but 3 referee bumps. There was also a work shoot with Goldberg whereby he turned up halfway through the match. There was a hideously confusing Canadian rules match where guest official Jacques Rougeau made the whole thing up as he went along. But actually, come to think of it, now that I've recited all that, it's actually pretty great, isn't it? I've messed this up. Sorry.
You want to play 22? Got 2 of those too.
It's Crown Jewel, Will Vaughan.
What?
Crown Jewel.
That was a great pay-per-view in a very progressive country.
It was, right, there's 2 ways you can look at Crown Jewel, right? You can either go, oh, they did a World Cup, which fundamentally wasn't a World Cup because everybody in it was American and it was won by Shane McMahon. That's bad. They did a vacant Universal title match, which lasted 3 minutes and was just Baron Corbin hitting Braun Strowman over the head, followed by Brock Lesnar throwing him out of a ring and still sweating. And then, yeah, or you could just touch on the fundamental flaws of doing a pay-per-view in a country that had just recently been connected with the murder of a journalist. It was just bad. It was just bad. I pointed out some of the very obvious flaws in this plan and people said they were going to behead me. So, in my opinion, a bad pay-per-view, top to bottom. Any further questions?
It's been nice knowing you, mate.
No, it wasn't.
You want to play blackjack? Got 2 of those too.
What is the worst pay-per-view ever?
Well, a lot of people say like their first WrestleMania is their favourite pay-per-view of all time, right? Not in my case.
Why is that?
Well, at the start of the week, I lost $500 in an Uber, so obviously I was miserable for the whole f***ing time. And then, like, for a few hours at WrestleMania, it was all lovely, all the right people f***ing won. And then Roman won, and it just all come crashing down. And I realised I'm $500 down, and Taker's f***ing retired. Brilliant.
This was a dimly lit exhibition of mummified dinosaurs who just couldn't go, and it was just depressing to see them being unable to go. I don't want to delve too far into Jake Roberts because it's really depressing, and mercifully he seems to have turned his life around. One match I will take a gigantic shit on, however, is the Bushwhackers versus the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. At one point, one of the Bushwhackers has to remonstrate with the referee, which he does by like pretending to wind up a punch because the Iron Sheik's doing some evil stuff in the middle of the ring. Now, the problem with this is Iron Sheik moves about like Shane McMahon's just wrestled for 5 minutes. Like, he's absolutely knackered. He's absolutely knackered. So to actually move takes him a good 3 minutes. So you've got one of the Bushwhackers just going for like 3 minutes. He's buffering in a very optimistic gesture. The director goes, right, we need to get away from this because this is taking forever. Let's pan to the crowd, right? We'll pan to the crowd. Now the problem is it's so dark you can barely see them. And an additional problem is that everyone's bored out of their tits, right? So the camera captures this kid, this rotund kid, picking his nose, literally, and it stays on him. Probably the most entertaining thing we've seen all night. This rotund kid picking his nose and just smears it on his chest. Do you want to be depressed? No? Don't watch Heroes of Wrestling then. I did. I had to write about it, man. So I watched the whole thing. I'd rather do admin. See you later.
The one that I'm choosing isn't probably the most immediate, but it's one that had just kind of long-lasting implications, and that is Survivor Series 2015. Now this is the 25th anniversary of The Undertaker. It was like all primed around that, and we were promised that we were going to get 2 amazing elimination matches, and even a match with Tyler Breeze that wasn't a joke. But what actually happened was it was 2 of the most forgettable elimination matches ever. The absolute guff that was going on with the Bray Wyatt family thing and The Undertaker, and finally a main event that was just absolutely terrible. But all the way through the night they were basically positing Sheamus as being a big old idiot. And they also were running the angle that Roman Reigns was the plucky underdog who was going to take on Dean Ambrose to basically win the vacated championship.
Yeah.
Now, there was a real problem with that because after Roman Reigns won, Sheamus cashed in, hit him with 2 bro kicks, and then everyone was sat there just going, oh, that's not good. That wasn't very fun for anyone involved. And basically tried to posit Roman Reigns versus The Authority as being the big angle. Now, there's two problems with that. One, Sheamus was at best a mid-carder at that point, so no one would ever want to see him or believe him as a sort of credible champion. And two, Roman Reigns is about as much of a plucky underdog as I am a hair model.
There were a couple of other terrible matches on this show. There was a First Blood match, which featured one of the performers openly blading on camera and ended with no real blood. The match ended when Matt Morgan was sprayed with some fake blood, which the referee turned around and saw and went, well, I guess that's the end of that one. And there was also a number one contenders match prior to the main event between Mr. Kennedy, or Mr. Anderson, and RVD. Yes, it went to a double count out, and the crowd were so disappointed / angry / just bloody frustrated with it all. Half of them were chanting, restart the match, and half of them were just saying, no. Please don't make us watch any more of this match where...
Sounds like Brexit.
Yeah, where Mr. Anderson can't even run under a leapfrog properly. We all know Jeff Hardy's problems now. It's almost okay to talk about it because he is now recovered. He's doing fantastically well, of course. But at that time, he was in a very dark place and obviously turned up to that pay-per-view in no condition to perform. Did TNA think maybe we shouldn't send him out there in the main event for the title and maybe use anyone in the back here like, oh, I don't know, Kurt Angle perhaps? No, they just shoved him out there with Sting. Eric Bischoff came out to kill a bit of time. Jeff Hardy, I think, just faked throwing his t-shirt into the crowd for a bit. Then Sting hit one move, a Scorpion Death Drop, then shoot pinned Jeff. You can see the scratches on Sting's neck where Jeff is actually trying to kick out because he has no clue what's going on. He doesn't even know where he is. Sting wins, and as he leaves, the crowd chants "Bullsh," and Sting replies, having just won the title, having just won the main event, turns to the crowd and says, I agree.
Well, first and foremost, I don't appreciate the question because, Simon Miller's a positive guy and I don't like looking at the negative, but also you can kind of take that question and manipulate it in a couple of ways. One, are we looking at it from a kind of like smart mark, oh, I didn't like that pay-per-view, or are we looking at it from a kayfabe point of view? I'm going to do that one just because it's more fun, because from a kayfabe point of view, it would have been Survivor Series 1997. I was but a very, very young boy. Wrestling was this brand new sparkly thing, and I thought Bret Hart was the best thing ever. And to see the finish of the Montreal Screwjob that we talked about 1,000 times, but to see that, and one, to not understand it, because it wasn't like I was reading wrestling news back then, but also for Bret Hart then to just vanish and have this really kind of anticlimactic end of a title reign, it sucked. And it took me weeks to work out, and then obviously, in the Raws that followed, you had the little person Bret Hart, the DX brought out. I didn't understand that either. So by and large, for a good month period, until a mate of mine in school told me that Bret Hart had gone to World Championship Wrestling, I was just confused. And I was devastated. So I'm going to say Survivor Series 1997. Also, the other thing with it, because everything happened at the end, who even remembers what else happened on the rest of the show? I'm sure if I did watch it, I'd remember. But now, you're just totally focused on that. So a little bit, not really an expected answer. I bet nobody else has said it. I don't know. I haven't talked to them. But I'm going Survivor Series 1997 because Bret Hart, it's still real to me, damn it.
I'm just going to list here all the people who were missing by the time Mania came about that year. Seth Rollins was obviously out with a knee injury. John Cena was out. Daniel Bryan had retired at this point. Sting was also injured, and we were all waiting for him to retire, which he did at that Hall of Fame when he got inducted. Randy Orton was injured. Cesaro was injured. Luke Harper was injured. Bray Wyatt was injured. Tyson Kidd was injured. And of course, most disappointingly, Nikki Bella was injured. So didn't get to see Nikki Bella, but never mind. But basically, I still thought I'm going to go to this and I'm going to try my best to enjoy it. And I need to point out at this point that I really enjoyed it when I was there, right? Because I just had a great time. It was WrestleMania, first one ever. How could you have a bad time? It's always going to be good. But actually, if I watched them on a one-on-one basis, mostly garbage. Mostly garbage. And I think you could summarize this, in fact, you could summarize it perfectly with The Rock's cameo at WrestleMania. The Rock takes up 20 minutes of that Mania. 5 of them was lighting his own name on fire with a flamethrower. I mean, put that aside, he then puts over Bray Wyatt and Co, who come to the ring to try and beat him up. But then what does he do? What does he do? He rock bottoms Eric Rowan and puts him away in a match that lasts about 6 seconds. Eric Rowan has only just recovered from that now. Has only come back into wrestling now from all of that. So you tell me, Adam Wilborn, what is going on here, because you've got this amazing moment of seeing The Rock live, but ultimately, when you look back at it, damage was done.
Wasn't great, was it?
Wasn't great at all. So yes, for me, that will always be my current, until the next one's perhaps, least favourite pay-per-view of all time.